Italy, winter 1943. Snow drifts against a stone wall as an American infantryman fumbles with a cold metal can. His fingers are numb, his helmet rim crusted with ice. Around him, the line is quiet for once, just distant artillery and the murmur of tired voices. He pulls a tiny P-38 can opener from his dog tag chain, punches it into the lid, and twists. The hiss of escaping steam as the can goes over a tiny sterno flame is almost comforting. In a few minutes, he'll be eating his dinner, a C Ration, meat and beans from a factory thousands of miles away, packed months ago. But right now, it's the difference between going hungry and going on. The story of the C Ration, officially Field Ration Type C, begins long before that winter night. In the late 1930s, the U.S. Army knew its old reserve ration from World War I, hard bread, bacon, and coffee, was outdated. Modern mechanized warfare demanded something different, a compact, durable meal that could be carried by a single soldier, eaten hot or cold, and survive any climate the Army might fight in. In 1938, the Quartermaster Subsistence Research and Development Laboratory in Chicago was tasked with creating that new ration, a canned, ready-to-eat meal that balanced calories, nutrition, and shelf life. The result became the C Ration. Field tests started around 1940, notably during the large-scale Louisiana maneuvers, where soldiers tried the new canned meals under realistic conditions. The feedback was blunt. The cans were heavy, but the food was filling and far more substantial than emergency chocolate bars or hardtack. Commanders liked the idea of an individual ration that didn't require field kitchens. With war looming, the Army moved quickly. By the time the United States entered World War II in December 1941, production of the C Ration was surging, and the new C Rats were on their way to every theater of operations. A full day's C Ration looked deceptively simple: 6 cans, 3 M units, the meat courses, and 3 B units, the bread and dessert portions. 1 M and 1 B together made a single meal. Early in the war, the menu was very limited. The original M units came in only 3 varieties: meat and beans, meat and vegetable hash, and meat and vegetable stew. The B units usually carried a few compact crackers, sugar tablets, and a beverage powder, instant coffee, a synthetic lemon drink, or bouillon. It wasn't glamorous, but 3 such meals gave a soldier roughly 3,700 calories a day, enough energy to march, dig, fight, and carry a rifle all day long. Alongside those cans came a small brown accessory pack, wrapped in butcher paper. Inside was the real personality of the C Ration: sugar tablets, chewing gum, either 3 short cigarette packs or a single long 9-pack of commercial brand cigarettes, a book of moisture-resistant matches, a little wooden spoon. Water purification tablets were used early on and later replaced by salt tablets, and perhaps most iconic of all, the tiny P-38 can opener, a folding sliver of stamped metal that many GIs would wear around their necks for years. For a combat soldier, this accessory pack was part survival kit, part comfort, part ritual. In North Africa in 1943, armored crews balanced C Ration cans on tank manifolds to warm them before a meal. In the Pacific, Marines on jungle-covered islands used cracker tins as cups and turned empty cans into makeshift stoves, punching holes in the sides and burning scrap cardboard soaked in gasoline. In Italy, men in the mountains learned to punch 2 holes in a can and pour out just enough stew to share with a buddy. The C Ration was never just food. It was something to improvise with, something to trade, something to joke about when the front was quiet. But there was a darker side: monotony. The original designers imagined the C Ration as a short-term solution, never more than 3 consecutive days. That was the theory. In practice, supply problems and battlefield chaos often meant soldiers lived on C Rats for weeks at a time. Eating the same few canned meals every day quickly wore down morale. Paper labels tended to fall off in wet or hot conditions, leaving rows of anonymous olive drab cans. Opening one became a nightly lottery: beans again, or hash again, or stew again. Soldiers joked bitterly that the only real surprise was whether the contents would be edible or not. The Quartermaster Corps did respond, though it took time. By 1943, they added new menus: meat and spaghetti in tomato sauce. Later came meat and noodles, pork and beans, frankfurters and beans, pork and rice, chicken and vegetables, ham and Lima beans, and more. Some were modestly popular. Others became legendary, usually for the wrong reasons. Ham and Lima beans, in particular, earned a reputation as perhaps the most hated entree in the entire U.S. military ration system. GIs gave it colorful nicknames and traded it away at any opportunity. Yet somehow it remained in the menus, not only through World War II, but into Korea and even Vietnam. On a windswept ridge in the Pacific, a Marine rifle squad gathers behind sandbags as night falls. They have taken casualties. Their uniforms are torn, and their boots are soaked with mud and seawater. The squad leader passes out sea rats from a battered case. Each man gets a meat can, a bread can, and an accessory pack. Cigarettes are swapped for chocolate, coffee for lemon powder, crackers for jokes and stories. No one likes the weight of the cans in their packs, but everyone is grateful when the matches catch and the first wisps of steam rise from a heating tin. The food tastes bland, overly soft, heavy with fat, but it's hot. For a few minutes, that's enough. Compared with the lighter C Ration, 3 small boxed meals totaling about 2,830 calories a day, the C Ration was bulkier and heavier, but denser and more substantial. The K was meant for assault troops and short operations. The C was meant to stand in when field kitchens couldn't reach the line. In theory, both were never supposed to replace fresh A rations or cooked B rations for long. In reality, neither theory nor planning survived contact with war. Soldiers and Marines in remote mountains, forests, and islands sometimes saw nothing but canned meals and boxed rations for far longer than the medical officers recommended. At the human level, sea rats became a kind of currency. Cigarettes from the accessory packs were traded for better entrees. Chocolate traveled between foxholes like small bars of gold. When troops encountered starving civilians, unpopular cans like ham and lima beans were sometimes handed over, only to be rejected once the contents were recognized. In crowded foxholes, empty cans became candle holders, improvised lanterns, and even periscopes when mirrors or bits of glass could be found. The metal was thin, but valuable in a world where everything else was expendable. There was also the weight. Each day's worth of C Rations, 6 small cans and accessories, added real burden to already overloaded packs. A combat load might include several days' rations. For infantry marching over hills, through snow, or across beaches, those extra pounds mattered. Yet the Army had chosen canned wet food because it could be eaten cold, required no special preparation, and survived long shipping journeys without spoiling. The C Ration was part of a larger logistical decision to accept weight and monotony in exchange for durability and simplicity. Back at the Chicago laboratory, nutritionists and food technologists pored over reports from the field. They read complaints of boredom and digestive trouble, but they also read praise. Some men preferred the solid, stew-like meals over the dry biscuits and chocolate of other rations. Others were grateful for any hot food at all. Between 1938 and 1945, millions upon millions of C Rations rolled off assembly lines operated by commercial food companies under government contract. The American home front's canning industry, normally busy filling grocery shelves, was retooled to feed soldiers scattered across North Africa, Europe, the Pacific, China, and beyond. By 1944 and 1945, as the Allies pushed into Germany and island hopped toward Japan, the C Ration had become an unmistakable part of the American soldier's identity. It appeared in photographs, boxes stacked in cargo nets slung from cranes, cans pictured in soldiers' hands during brief rest periods. It appeared in letters home, sometimes as a joke, still eating the same old stew, and sometimes as a quiet complaint about the sameness of life at the front. Yet those same letters often mentioned a strange, comforting detail, the familiar taste. In a war full of chaos and uncertainty, the predictable flavor of meat and beans in a small can gave many men a sense of routine. Medical officers studied the effects of long-term reliance on packaged rations. Reports after the war noted that while C rations provided enough calories and basic nutrients, they were never ideal for continuous use. Fresh fruits, vegetables, and variety remained important for health and morale. Still, for short durations, the very situations they were originally designed for, C rats did their job. They kept troops alive, fueled, and fighting, even when supply lines were stretched and field kitchens couldn't operate within range. In the final months of the war, planners began thinking beyond victory. New ration concepts like the E Ration attempted to combine the best features of the C and K rations, but tests found flaws, especially with the bread component, and the E Ration was abandoned. Instead, the Army returned to the C Ration designation and refined it into post-war variants like the C2 and C3 with more menu diversity and improved nutritional balance. The legacy of the World War II C Ration stretched forward into the Korean War and beyond, eventually evolving into the meal, combat, individual, and much later, the modern MRE. But the heart of its story remains in those wartime scenes: a trench in Italy, a foxhole in Normandy, a jungle clearing on Bougainville, a snow-covered hill on the Western Front. In each of those places, a soldier at some point sat down, however briefly, opened an olive drab can, and ate. The food inside was not special by peacetime standards: overcooked beans, soft meat, crackers, and sweet tablets. Yet in that moment, it represented the entire industrial might of the United States. Farms, factories, railroads, ships, and laboratories all working together so that a man with a rifle half a world away would not go hungry. As the war ended and soldiers returned home, many swore they would never open another can of meat and beans again. Yet decades later, collectors, veterans, and historians still hold surviving C ration cans in their hands and think back. For those who carried them, the memories are mixed: boredom, frustration, occasional gratitude, and sometimes a strange nostalgia. The C ration was heavy, monotonous, and often disliked, but it was dependable. It was there in foxholes, on beaches, in bombed-out cities, and on remote islands. In the end, the story of the C ration is not really about cans and menus, but about endurance. It is the story of how a nation tried to solve a very simple problem: how to put food in one soldier's hands anywhere on Earth, and in doing so, created one of the most recognizable icons of the Second World War. In countless black and white photographs, a GI sits with a helmet on his head, a rifle at his side, and a little open can in his hand. That can is a C ration, and for a brief, quiet moment between battles, it meant safety, warmth, and the strength to fight one more day.